brother! R.J. Lupin, as in Remus John Lupin, Harry's third year and notably best Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, posthumous recipient of the Order of Merlin First Class Award, Marauder, and esteemed werewolf. Lupin, in my opinion, is a highly underrated character, and the more time I've spent with his on-page persona, the more I feel like he was destined to become a Dumbledore-like presence in the wizarding world. His calm, cool, and polite demeanor, studious nature, and willingness to bend the rules at times makes him almost a shadow of the famous headmaster. I personally love Lupin dearly, but only just recently has a member of our community, Lane, pointed out an odd truth that I've never really snagged on in the past. It's this line right here. "Professor R.J. Lupin," whispered Hermione at once. "How'd you know that?" "It's on his case," she replied, pointing at the luggage rack over the man's head, where there was a small battered case held together with a large quantity of neatly knotted string. The name, Professor R.J. Lupin, was stamped across one corner in peeling letters. Now, it goes without saying that during this time, no professors have taught the subject of Defense Against the Dark Arts long enough to have peeling letters on their suitcase for that job specifically. However, Lupin is obviously an exception case, pun vaguely intended. Because of his affliction as a werewolf, he faces tremendous prejudice within the wizarding world and is therefore unable to carry a job that we're aware of for any meaningful amount of time. And yet, the peeling letters. Now, if it was just like his name and peeling letters and the professor part looked new, then that would be one thing, but how and or why is the word professor so weathered when there's no real indication that he's ever been a professor before? Well, not to worry, folks. Today we are getting to the bottom, maybe literally, of the mystery of Lupin's case. Hey, brother! Okay, why does it say professor on the briefcase? Or more specifically, why is the word professor battered? Because, after all, he is a professor, but we also all know that it's a very newly appointed professor, and as a werewolf, someone we can very safely assume has not found great employment in this field prior to now, as it is, after all, that very secret being released by Snape at the end of the year that leads to his departure from the school. "No, Professor Dumbledore managed to convince Fudge that I was trying to save your lives," he sighed. "That was the final straw for Severus. I think the loss of the Order of Merlin hit him hard, so he, accidentally let slip that I'm a werewolf this morning at breakfast." Dude, Snape sucks!
Obviously.
But just because he didn't manage to secure any long-term employment doesn't mean he couldn't have taught anywhere, right? I mean, otherwise, for a first-year teacher, he is astonishingly good at it. All the students describe him as the best professor they ever had, and he quickly and naturally draws the best out of his students, coaching Neville out of the gate to confront a boggart, and coaching a third-year Harry to cast the crazy difficult Patronus charm.
"You cast a corporeal Patronus?
What?
You mean to say it had a defined form?"
"Yes, it's a stag. Always a stag."
"Always?"
"Yes, Professor Lupin taught me."
"Impressive!"
We don't get enough Madame Bones, you know?
"True, perfectly true."
That's her too. Oh, I'm having fun today. Certainly Lupin must have some experience, right? But where? Durmstrang? Beauxbaton? Somewhere else? Durmstrang is almost immediately out because they don't include the defense against portion of the course, simply opting instead to teach the dark arts, something I cannot imagine under any scenario our Remus John J. Jingleheimer Smith Lupin having any part of, since, you know, like, he dedicates his life to the eradication and defeat of the dark arts. Life and death. R.I.P. It's not funny, you know? That one hurts.
Avada Kedavra!
No! Cedric!
And then there's Beauxbaton, the other wizarding school in proximity that seems to be a candidate, and to be fair, as a half-giant, Madame Maxime may know a thing or two about prejudice and overlook such a thing. However, I also find this unlikely, primarily based on how the Beauxbaton students seem to take in Hogwarts as an establishment. Meanwhile, Fleur Delacour was criticizing the Hogwarts decorations to Roger Davies. "This is nothing," she said, dismissively looking around at the sparkling walls of the Great Hall. "At the Palace of Beauxbaton, we have ice sculptures all around the dining chamber at Christmas. They do not melt, of course. They are like blah, blah, blah." She goes on for a while. "Will you pass? The bouillabaisse. Ka-choo."
The grandiose.
10 people got that joke. Point is, the Beauxbaton seem a bit more haughty than the Hogwartsians, and Lupin might be a little too shab chic for them, and also, as far as I know, he doesn't speak French, so... From there, the other obvious option would then be Ilvermorny, where I can see Lupin wanting to escape to a new land, where his condition was completely unknown, and where prejudices may be different, just as long as you don't turn on the news. But while I'd like to believe the Americans could have been open-minded towards Remus, we have this line from Newt that suggests things may be, if anything, stricter.
That you're not meant to befriend them, that you can't marry them, which seems mildly absurd to me.
Who's gonna marry him?
Your sister, Tina! But I digress. The other kind of fun idea is that Remus didn't deal with magical prejudice at all because he didn't teach magic. He simply taught Muggle studies. And not like the wizarding course called Muggle studies, but like taught Muggles their studies at Muggle University, which is an idea that I really like because it would still give him the experience needed to become a good teacher with less overall risk of exposure.
Come on down to Muggle University.
I don't know why I introduced it like it was a race car track or something, or like a discount t-shirt store.
Those are the same.
But either way, it will be hard for him to keep any job for long because of his condition and monthly ailments. It even says in Heroism, Hardship, and Dangerous Hobbies that Remus now lived a hand-to-mouth existence, taking jobs that were far below his level of ability, always knowing that he would have to leave them before his pattern of growing sick once a month at the full moon was noticed by his workmates. It's a thrilling thought, and yet I think there's more to Lupin's case, and in order to understand the full scope of it, we need to also provide a little of the known backstory that leads us to the man that we meet during Harry's third year, and our story actually starts all the way back in 1947, a good 13 years before Remus was even born. But still, 1947 is a rather impactful year for Lupin because it was the year that none other than our boy...
My boy!
No, not that boy. That one is funny. Someone's gonna... But no, our boy being the one and only Newton Artemis Newt Scamander founded the Werewolf Registration Act. True fact. An act that goes on to be of extreme importance to Remus's life for the obvious reasons, of course. He's a werewolf, but for less obvious reasons as well. Because you see, Remus's father, Lyle Lupin, who was a world-renowned expert on non-human spirituous apparitions, which included poltergeists and boggarts and other strange creatures that, while sometimes ghost-like in appearance and behavior, have never been truly alive. Kinda cool, super fitting for the father of the guy who teaches the boggart and anti-dementor lessons at school, right? Oh, and the Wadiwasi spell against Peeves, that's a poltergeist thing. Although Wadiwasi might be more gum-based magic when I think about it than poltergeist-based, but you still get the point. Some of you are like, what's Wadiwasi? It's a spell that shoots gum out of keyholes. Obviously.
Are you sure that's a real spell? Well, it's not very good, is it?
John, we need to take a quick pause right there to give a huge thank you to today's sponsor, Shopify. Okay, so I've maybe always been one of those like side hustle kind of people. Like in high school, I would detail cars on the weekend, and in college, I made and sold like paracord bracelets. Do you remember those? As like a way to raise money for my study abroad in Australia. But somewhere along the line, someone said the words to me, you're not an entrepreneur until you can make sales even when you're not working. And whether it's a quest to become like a entrepreneur or just a way to like make a proper living, Shopify is the way to make this happen. And my wife Alice and I use Shopify for a business that we run together called Nude. And truly one of the coolest things is hearing the Shopify like cha-ching sound while we're sitting on the couch just watching a movie at night. But we do also still value that human connection and have a brick and mortar location. But the good news is that Shopify gives you everything you need to sell online and in person. So in 2026, stop waiting and start selling with Shopify. There's the sound. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/SCB. Again, go to shopify.com/SCB. One last time for safety, shopify.com/SCB. Hear your first this new year with Shopify by your side. Thanks to the Pottermore archives, we know that in the year 1964, Voldemort was on the rise big time, and Lyle's knowledge of dark creatures caused him to be recruited by the Ministry to help combat the growing Dark Army, and he gladly joined the ranks in the Department for the Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures. And this is where Newt's werewolf registry will cross paths with Lyle, because he gets assigned to the committee determining if, in fact, certain wizards were werewolves. But it was just him and 2 other overworked wizards who thought Lyle was outside of his field of expertise, and so did not take him very seriously when Lyle believed that Fenrir Greyback was a werewolf and responsible for the death of 2 Muggle children. Again, all this information is in the Pottermore archives, in case you're wondering where it's coming from. But upon being dismissed by his 2 co-workers, it causes Lyle, who is normally quiet and mild-mannered, to become frustrated in describing werewolves as soulless, evil, and deserving nothing but death, which is a deeply unfortunate take, and words that one Fenrir Greyback was none too pleased about at all. And after he was released free of charge, he sought to immediately enact revenge and successfully plotted the biting of Lyle's 4-year-old son, Remus. So that sucks. Then, for most of Remus's childhood, he would operate under the belief that he would never be allowed to attend school, and his existence was incredibly lonely, as his parents worked hard to find ways to keep him and others safe during his transformations. Then enter Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore.
I do love knitting patterns.
As we all know, Dumbledore sees no reason to not educate Remus, and makes arrangements for him to be able to undergo his transformations within the Shrieking Shack via a secret passage hidden beneath the newly planted Whomping Willow. Hooray! Remus immediately and unexpectedly finds a second family in the form of the Marauders, who don't count Remus's condition against him for even a moment. Which brings us to one of my own personal favorite explanation as to where Remus received his battered old suitcase. From his friends.
Nice one, James!
For clarity, we're in the realm of headcanon for just a moment, but I'm obsessed with this sentiment. Because while James and Sirius are the ones who are considered to be the best at everything they do, even they consider Lupin to be the most studious of their group. He's the one who has only ever felt accepted while at Hogwarts and may want to stay there to continue his career. Of course, all 4 of them end up joining the Order of the Phoenix immediately after graduation, but I can 100% see the Marauders giving Lupin a case with the words Professor R.J. Lupin on it, as a mark of their confidence that not only he will become a professor and that his condition won't hold him back, but also as a sign that they are confident they will win the war and days of peace will return, and that's really what they're all fighting for. And I'll be honest, I'm perfectly happy with this explanation, but there is another option as well that I think is equally fun. Consider this. Newt introduces the Werewolf Registry in 1947. Its failure to be properly maintained directly leads to Lupin getting bit. The son of a man in the department Newt used to work for, a man who was an expert in non-human spirituous apparitions. A field of study Newt himself is fairly well versed in, having dealt with Obscurus for a good portion of his life. It seems immensely likely that Newt and Lyle would have crossed paths, especially since, according to Hero's Hardships and Dangerous Hobbies, Lyle did all he could to find a cure, but neither potions nor spells could help his son. From this time onwards, the family lives were dominated by the need to hide Remus's condition. They uprooted themselves from village to town, leaving the instant that rumors of the boy's odd behavior started. Newt's involvement with the Werewolf Registration Act and Lyle's world-renowned reputation as an expert on non-human spiritual apparitions almost make their meeting inevitable. Kind of a niche field of study, so like not a lot of members in that subreddit. But if you guys want to make some like NHSA shirts and we can all be a part of it together, like I'm in. We'll probably never be as big as like human spiritual apparitions. But you know what? Like they think they're so special because they're human. Those would just be ghosts, by the way. In case you were wondering, not boggarts, ghosts. Anyway, by the time Lyle is out looking for answers, it's 1964. Newt will be well past his adventure days and settle down with Tina in Dorset, breeding Kneazles, Millie, Hopper, and... Let me know if you know the third Kneazle in the comments down below, right? Engagement, good for the algorithm! Of course, there is no cure for werewolf bites, but I do think Newt could provide a unique solution for young Remus, and to the dangers associated with the transformation. A magically imbibed suitcase that happens to contain a fully functioning, beast-ready safe haven. And this fits. It's perfect, because no matter what, as a werewolf, Lupin is going to have to travel around a lot, always changing jobs, but you can always keep the suitcase with you. And it doubly works because despite being deeply poor due to bad job prospects and always having tattered looking robes, it means that regardless of income, he would always have a place to live. And you might just be thinking to yourself, well, what about just like going home? And a knee-jerk reaction might say, Ben, it's Harry Potter. They're living in dark times. No one has parents. And that is half true. His mother was now dead, And while Lyle, his father, was always delighted to see his son, Remus refused to endanger his father's peaceful existence by returning to live with him. So it's literally covered. He doesn't live at home. But if Newt is retired, he probably doesn't need the case anymore, as he likely just has his own beast haven in his basement like we see in Crimes of Grindelwald. Of course, you may be saying, like, well, Newt's case is quite nice with that, like, cool latch on it and stuff, while Lupin's is, held together with a large quantity of neatly knotted string. But first of all, if it is indeed the same case, by the time we meet it in Prisoner of Azkaban, it's well over 70 years old, at least. So, yeah, it's beat up. And two, I always wonder why he needs string and doesn't magically repair it. But if it was damaged by him being a werewolf, then I bet it can't be repaired by magic. It's just permanent damage, like Bill's scars. And not for nothing, but Lupin has that case with him a lot. And not for nothing, but it seems like it can hold a lot. Like, everything he brings to Hogwarts comes in that one case.
You're amazing, you are.
Always a tone of surprise.
I heard about the match, said Lupin, turning back to his desk and starting to pile books into his briefcase. And I'm sorry about your broomstick. Then there's this scene with Harry where we see that Lupin keeps a small pantry in there, apparently. I have complete confidence in you, said Lupin, smiling. Here, you've earned a drink, something from the 3 broomsticks. You won't have tried it before. He pulled 2 bottles out of his briefcase. You know how we all keep like more than 3.4 fluid ounce bottles of liquid in our briefcases, right? Right? That's a thing. 3.4 because you don't like travel size. I wonder if they have that with wizards. It's a TSA joke for you. But on top of that, we also know that Lupin is big on teaching about magical creatures. Harry had known this office under 3 of its previous occupants. In the days where Gilderoy Lockhart had lived here, it had been plastered in beaming portraits of its owner. When Lupin had occupied it, it was likely you would meet some fascinating dark creature in a cage or tank if you came to call. Now let me ask you guys a question. Where better to be sourcing such cages and or tanks than Newt's own case? Especially if Remus hadn't specifically been teaching this subject before. You know how people move around a lot are like likely to keep their cages and tanks with them. You know, good for road packing. Oh, man, maybe the school provided the cages and tanks. You know they didn't. And then we have this last one when he's packing to leave. He had already packed most of his things. The Grindylows empty tank stood next to his battered old suitcase, which was open and nearly full. Nearly full, and yet he then manages to empty every drawer of his desk into it and several more books. Like, that's too much stuff. You know how you're like sitting on your suitcase trying to close it, and then you're like, wait a second, I forgot 10 books. Don't mind me. Don't mind me. They fit. So, my headcanon, Newt gave Lupin the case because he felt specifically responsible for the failure of his own Werewolf Registration Act and wanted to help. His friends then later had the case embossed with what they knew was to be his future career. And that's why the letters are peeling and why he carries around so much and why he can fit so much inside. Honestly, what really strings the whole thing together for me is the Dumbledore of it all. Newt takes a major step back after the downfall of Grindelwald and has no real role in combating Voldemort. But as Dumbledore is the one who sends Newt on all of his covert missions and who makes special arrangements for Lupin to be able to attend Hogwarts and is then later part of Dumbledore's secret society, the Order of the Phoenix, and Remus's father studies spirituous creatures, a thing that Newt also has studied in the form of obscuruses on behalf of Dumbledore, and the whole Newt is responsible for the Werewolf Registration Act and its discourse over that very under-maintained nature of that leads to the attack of Lupin. Do you see what I mean? It's more than enough neatly tied string to wrap around a magical personal shrieking shack. But y'all, as always, thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode. Be sure to like the video and subscribe so you don't miss any future Harry Potter action from us. If you'd like to see even further how Newt is heavily associated with wolves, in particular, you can check out this video right here that talks about how Luna is almost certainly turning into a wolf. But otherwise, don't forget, ducks go in cups.